So while Rockstar Games, Grove Street Games, and a random studio in India are all dealing with the fallout of the botched launch of the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition that we've seen play out over the last few days, the community have been shilling what's called the Definitive Edition patch. I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video, but basically what it is, it's an all-in-one download that you extract over your original GTA 3, Vice City, or San Andreas install that basically just adds a bunch of texture upgrades and other quality of life improvements made by the GTA modding community. It's their interpretation of what Rockstar Games would have done if they were to re-release this game on modern hardware. As things would play out, they've done a much better job than Grove Street Games and the team they outsourced to in India, and it very much tickles my autism. Some of the enhancements include improved vehicle reflections that were only found in the original Xbox releases of these games, ported over to the PC. They include support for modern gamepad controls. It includes support for wide or even ultra-wide monitors, which you're seeing on display here. There's a uniform chase cam across all three games, so it feels like there's continuity when you switch between the three different titles. And of course, the big thing, it runs at 60 FPS. As you can imagine, no slowdowns, runs buttery smooth. The car models they haven't touched, the character models they haven't touched. Each city retains its default lighting and atmosphere, and they've even preserved the view fog that helped these maps back in the day feel a lot bigger than they actually were. So what you've been seeing over the course of this video is me running the Turismo street race in Portland using the Definitive Edition project mod, and I just don't have any complaints. This is more or less, what I wanted from Rockstar's Definitive Edition release, but for whatever reason, we never got. This was, I think, the third or fourth attempt of this race. Obviously, I want to record one where I'm not crashing all the time. And what really stood out to me when hot lapping this car is that the driving physics of this game actually held up pretty well. In fact, all of the 3D GTA games have pretty good driving physics. Yes, the steering is a little bit snappy, and the sense of speed is warped because the environment has been scaled down. These maps aren't as big as you remember them being. But the analog throttle, braking, and steering controls are all really nuanced and give you a lot of control over the car. Ripping the e-brake, as you'll see here, it's possible to both sustain a drift as well as overdo it. There's a lot more skill to it than you'd think. The car doesn't just randomly wash out and loop itself on you. Take notes, iRacing. And just the weight and the inertia and the momentum, coupled with the fact that all of these cars you're driving are street cars and have really soft sprung suspensions. Shortcuts are kind of risky. Jumps are kind of risky. Taking weird lines like I do right here, it's sketchy. It's not a guaranteed this will work moment. Wet weather driving, which you're seeing here, also includes its own set of physics. Braking distances are increased just a bit. If I rip the e-brake in a tight corner, the rear end wanders around just a bit more than it does, on a dry surface. But it's not overly, in the simulation direction like the driver games were. And it's not firmly in the arcade direction either, like you would see in the Midnight Club games and Midtown Madness games of the era. And it's probably why a lot of kids have such fond memories of just cruising around causing shit in these games. The cars are just a lot of fun to drive. It also shits on the design philosophy of a lot of modern arcade racers, where there are like dedicated brake-to-drift mechanics or stuff like that. GTA never felt the need to reinvent the wheel. They just made a very robust but simplistic driving model, and it allows experienced players to do stuff like this, where they chain drifts together in the rain, and it looks sick, and it's a lot of fun. Anyways, I'm going to head back to GTA. This is really what Rockstar should have released with the Definitive Edition, and following the news cycle in regards to their new release is just funny at this point. They were outdone by just bored dudes on the internet.